the will and desires of the unconscious. Through the above description, one gets a taste of how the individual crown and trunk of the tree manifesting above ground in veiled space-time experience has roots that connect the individual mind to layers of group minds, then to the blueprint of mind itself, then to the mind of the Creator. However, the various layers of mind are not a static repository containing information the way a library does books. It is instead a dynamic system which is at once repository of memory and experience and replete with desires, will, awareness, and programming. This is evidenced in a variety of passages in the Raw Contact, including Ra's description of the subconsciousness' role in healing. An entity may not consciously seek healing and yet subconsciously be aware of the need to experience the new set of distortions which result from healing and thus be healed. Similarly, an entity may consciously desire healing greatly, but within the being, at some subconscious level, find some cause whereby certain configurations which seem quite distorted are in fact at that level considered appropriate. This passage demonstrates that the subconscious may render healing or draw the self to healing without the conscious seeking. Conversely, the subconscious may not enable the healing sought by the conscious mind if the distorted configuration, a physical limitation, an illness, a mental distortion, etc., is desired by the deeper self as a means of facilitating a certain, probably pre-incarnatively chosen lesson. In another example, Ra offers one of their strongest cautions in all of the material. They highlight the need for great care as the will grows stronger and more power is brought into the system of self. Your facility of will is that which is powerful within you as co-creator. You cannot ascribe to this facility too much importance. Thus, it must be carefully used and directed in service to others for those upon the positively oriented path. There is great danger in the use of the will as the personality becomes stronger, for it may be used even subconsciously in ways reducing the polarity of the entity. I read this to mean that if there is unhealed or unintegrated forces and memory in the subconscious, whether from trauma or other negative bias, The subconscious may grab hold of the will and use it in ways that reduce the polarity of the entity, acting not in love but in separation, even to the point of harming self or other, even to the point of insanity. The subconscious will of the instrument made regular guest appearances in the raw contact. It has led both to the depletion of her vital energy, due to her strong will to serve, and the preservation of that vital energy due to making a subconscious commitment to guard that energy. It is a fascinating case study of the impact and role of the subconscious in the life patterns. Here, Ra describes how those of Maldek, as Ra identified the planet, were consciously unable to gain the awareness held in their subconscious. This calling was of those of Maldek. These entities were aware of their need for rectifying the consequences of their action, and were in some confusion in an incarnate state as to the circumstances of their incarnation. The unconscious being aware, the conscious being quite confused. This created a calling. And then there was one that I particularly appreciated. We scan this instrument and find its distortion towards appreciation of Don and Jim's caring, as you may call it. This atmosphere, shall we say, offers the greatest contrast to the discomfort of such psychic attacks, being the reciprocal, that is, the atmosphere of psychic support. This each of you do as a subconscious function of true attitudinal, mental, emotional, and spiritual distortions towards this instrument. There is no magic greater than honest distortion towards love. In the depths of Dawn and Jim's being, they were biased towards genuinely loving and caring for Carla in attitude, mind, emotion, and spirit. Catalysts and the unconscious, in ways that I do not fully grok. Catalyst seems to derive from and be largely constituted of the subconscious mind. The most obvious metaphor that comes to mind is that of the iceberg and its tip. Most of the iceberg resides out of view below the waterline. What is visible is only its uppermost portion, a small sampling relative to the whole. This is a very limited metaphor, however, because the iceberg is relatively uniform above and below water. In contrast, what is perceived as catalyst by the conscious mind, the tip of the iceberg, is not typically representative of the true nature of catalysts as it is known and experienced by the subconscious mind. This is due to the veil which hides or obscures or distorts the catalyst, a situation that is amplified by our various misapprehensions, our often divided attention, and our imperfect memory. All that you perceive seems to be consciously perceived. This is not the correct supposition. All that you perceive is perceived as catalysts unconsciously by the, shall we say, time that the conscious mind begins its appreciation of catalysts. That catalyst has been filtered through the veil, and in some cases much is veiled in the most apparently clear perception. I read this as saying that by the time we register something as catalyst, an emotion, a sensation, a reaction, a complex of feeling and thought about a person or ourselves, etc. However clear it seems to our awareness, its actual origin and meaning remain veiled. Here is one very small example. In the questioner, we may see the desire not to be carrying the load it carries, given as physical manifestation of the soreness of those muscles for carrying used. That which is truly needed to be carried is a pre-incarnative responsibility which seems highly inconvenient. The questioner, Don Elkins, experienced the catalyst of sore muscles. To his conscious perception, this was simply seen to be sore muscles. But in truth, this catalyst was a subconscious origin, a manifestation of his reluctance or fulfilling his pre-incarnatively chosen responsibility. This also points to how the body complex is a key ally in understanding and working with the unconscious. Whether it is merely a sensation or a long-term condition, the body, like a dream, reveals the symbolic language of the unconscious mind. That the nature of catalysts is overwhelmingly of an unconsciousness brings home how Ra describes our plane as being not one of understanding. We behave or respond in ways we don't understand. We are drawn to or away from other people without perhaps conscious forethought. We enact dramas with each other that baffle the other person or ourselves or all parties. All this because the veil obscures our own subconscious awareness from our conscious understanding. The words that we use on an intellectual level to communicate may be completely belied by what our subconscious is communicating, thus confusing the recipient of our words or confusing us when they react to our subconscious signal. Even as we dig down to consciously comprehend the sources and purpose of our catalysts, we still don't often see the deeper layers of incarnational programming that biases us in the first place to have a certain range of orientation, reaction, or expression in order to solicit certain lessons. Though the journey of self-realization is a journey of making catalysts increasingly conscious. Indeed, catalyst is not processed into the experience which precipitates growth until appreciated by the conscious mind. All uses of catalysts by the mind are those consciously applied to catalysts. Without conscious intent, the use of catalysts is never processed through meditation, ideation, and imagination.